Well, it is that time of year again here in Alaska. Long summer days that just don't end, sunsets that go on forever, and cheap avgas. Thanks, Russia and Iran. And, hey, excuse me, no, not right now. I'm trying to make a video over here. Could you wait? Hey, really? Hey, seriously? So he had the usual suspects, me and the Bearhawk and Stefan the 170, and as luck would have it, we were in the area of Paxson that weekend, right where the Cessna 180-185 flying was happening, so we decided to crash the party and actually learned quite a bit about 180s and 185s that weekend. One of those things we learned was that 1 in 5 Skywagon pilots has an undiagnosed drinking problem. But as it also turns out, that's the same as the national average for all pilots, so nothing new really there. Of course, there was food, drinks, good friends, and a whole lot of fun. Now, per usual, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. Before we actually got to Paxson, we had initially departed Anchorage, flew on up to Palmer for the cheapest gas in the state, and then down to Birchwood before heading on out to the Knik Glacier for an awesome evening of airplane camping.
Birchwood traffic, flight of 2 entering runway 2, departing north, Birchwood.
I came from the mud, there's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree, there's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon. Catch me howling at the moon. Trying to catch me howling at the moon. Trying to catch me howling at the moon. Trying to catch me howling at the moon. When it rains, it pours. Water's up to my chin. Won't stop fighting to the very end. Many men try to reach it. Many men have failed. Well, if you wanna get to heaven, you gotta raise a little hell. And I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon. Facing on a sleepless night. Will you find me? Hope you find me. I'll be back home soon. When the sun rises, when the sun we're trying to catch me howling at the moon. Trying to catch me howling at the moon.
So yeah, quite the flight out there to Knik, quite the place to camp for the evening. Luckily enough, one of our friends was also able to join us. Nick brought his Super Cub out there, and it really puts everything in perspective for you. When you see him take off here and that 35-foot wingspan turns right out over the hills towards the ice, and you get a feel for just how massive those chunks of ice are and how big the glacier is and how incredible and vast this valley is that we're in here right at the foot of the Knik Glacier. Just incredible place to camp for the evening. To make things even better, Nick was down to go for a little flight, and he and I put the Bearhawk side by side next to each other, doing a little comparison of who could take off shorter, who could land shorter, who could fly faster, who could fly slower, and that is in a whole separate video. The link is in the description below this one if you want to see all the different specs for the PA-18 Super Cub and the Bearhawk Patrol. And after our little comparison video, we watched him disappear out into the beautiful sunset. Steph and I sat down by the fire for a little while longer, stared at the icebergs, and then went to sleep in this incredibly beautiful place, waking up the next morning underneath the wings of our airplanes, parked next to this massive glacier with this incredible view. You just got the feeling that it was going to be a really good day to continue our trip flying out east.
So I got the strip in sight right here to my left. It's close to the river, the edge of the river.
Is it on the upper shelf or the lower shelf?
The upper shelf.
Alrighty.
Really bumpy, I don't know, do you want to stop there or?
We don't have to.
It's really bumpy. I don't know if, I mean, we could stop there if you want, but.
Yeah, it's a little bumpy for these tires.
You want to try the other one?
Sure, we can drag the other one or just do a little bounce and go.
Does it feel?
Yeah, I mean, one of those things where you really want to land there, and I just don't know that I really want to land there. It's not all that interesting.
Yeah, I know. Alright, let's just go back. I'm really low in fuel.
Okay, sounds good. Little tires and this gear is not really conducive for some of that stuff.
Yeah, fine. Doesn't break my heart.
After getting bounced out of those first two strips, with these little tires just a little bit on the bumpy side for these little guys, I couldn't resist the urge to go fly low along the river, take in all the scenery. Steph headed on over to the airport to top off with gas, and then we made our way on up the Matanuska River Valley, beautiful valley, working on over towards the Matanuska Glacier, first popping into a little gravel bar for a quick bathroom break. Thanks to the GoPro for dying on approach, so yeah, we videoed the approach and videoed the takeoff. Not quite the landing, but I assure you it was a 10 out of 10. There's no video evidence to suggest otherwise. After that, we continued on up the river valley. Absolutely breathtaking views. Working on up towards the Matanuska Glacier with a final destination of Sheep Mountain Lodge, a cool little spot right on the side of the highway there that also happens to have their own little strip that you can land at. great place. Highly recommend the food and the ginger cookies they have there.
Matanuska area traffic, flight at 2 is 3,500 over the toe of the glacier, landing Sheep Mountain. Alright, ready for me to go first?
Yep, I'm on downwind.
Cool, I'll land, roll out, and try to make a right turn off, make room for you.
Okay.
We enjoyed some good food, really enjoyed that ginger cookie, and then it was time for us to get back in the airplanes. We had already burnt up quite a bit of daylight. Believe it or not, it was already 7:30 p.m. when we were taking off out of Sheep Mountain, heading over towards Gulkana for our next fuel stop. The terrain changes quite a bit en route there. It opens up quite a bit more with a lot more green, still very beautiful in its own way. And the only thing ugly about that entire area really was just the fuel prices in Gulkana.
Gulkana traffic, flight at 2, base 915, Gulkana.
After a quick top off in Gulkana, it was time for the last leg of day 2, the final leg of the day, Gulkana to Paxson, where we're going to be camping for the next few days. It was a beautiful evening for our flight, about 9 p.m. when we finally got the wheels up, flying over more pretty green scenery and over the Trans-Alaska pipeline that runs all the way from Prudhoe Bay down to Valdez, carrying about 500,000 barrels of oil per day through that 48-inch wide pipe. It really is quite a cool thing to see from the air, carrying oil over 800 miles, 600 some miles in a straight line. It's a little zigzaggy, so over 800 miles from Prudhoe Bay down to Valdez. About an 18-day journey to travel the full 800 miles through the pipe. Conveniently enough, following the pipeline in the road northbound led us right to Paxson for a nice swirly, kinda windy end of the day.
Good crosswind above the trees. I don't know what it's going to be like below them.
Yeah. Where are you at?
10 feet. A little squirrely. I probably landed with like a quartering tailwinds, mostly crosswind, and then it just kind of goes away and gets burbly below the trees.
Should I come in the other way?
Yeah, both ways suck. I just land this way because it's an easier, taxi. The windsock's just tattered to hell, and it's hanging fairly limp.
So yeah, pretty swirly winds, 2 bouncy landings, Nothing that a few cold beers can't fix. Bottom line, yeah, Steph and I, it's not like every landing's pretty. And that was definitely one of those times where it was a little bit swirly in there. Either way, still a nice evening to settle in down by the fire, throw back a few beers, get some good sleep. And by the next morning, when we got out of our tent at the crack of noon, seems like the whole 185 clan showed up and was ready to party. Steph, being the lady that she is, put it in quiet mode for her takeoff. Very nice of her, protect all her ears. And the flight of 6 of us headed on out to go explore some gold mines out in the hills near Paxson.
Okay, I'm heading up over the mountains as well, eastbound. You heading up over the hills then?
Yeah, the first trip that I was going to check out just right in front of me here, at least from where I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah, 3's down, rolling to the end.
Four's down.
Our first stopping place for the day was an active gold mine right near Slate Creek, just east of the Knik Glacier, and quite a beautiful place to be out there all summer mining for gold in that valley. Just epic views, lots of cool old equipment laying around. Took some pictures standing on top of weird rocks that looked like wood, and before we knew it, it was starting to rain and hail a little bit, so it was time for us to blast out of there in search of better weather to our next stop, a unimproved strip on the sectional chart, just 2 valleys over.
strip. I'm just coming up overhead.
I'm just north of the strip here at 4,000.
Bearhawk's about maybe 2 miles downriver the strip, going upriver at 50 feet over the river.
And Cessna 407 is just, I'm following Stephanie around. I'm about a quarter mile back behind her.
Okay, I'm going to land the strip here, and I'm going to land upriver. Looks like that's what the windsock's dictating, so I'm just overhead now, and I'm going to land it.
Bearhawk's crossing over the strip, low will be number 2.
And the unimproved strip actually turned out to be pretty nice. Actually a lot more improved than many other strips we go to in Alaska that are on the sectional chart. So pretty cool place. Room to park 6 airplanes, no problem. Even the windsock turned out to be in a lot better shape than the windsock in Paxson. And last but not least, Juliet November showed up. A little bit of backstory on this particular 185. Steph has been eyeing this airplane for the last 2 years, ever since she decided that, well, maybe it's time for her to move on from the 170 into something a little bit bigger. And this one certainly has caught her eye in particular. Very shiny paint, actually too shiny to be a bush plane. Lots of flashy lights and very decked out panel. Jimmy was actually a swell enough guy to let her take it up for a lap around the pattern, while the rest of us just kind of stood around, BS'd about airplanes, and took in all the scenery, staring up at the Tonsina Glacier. And as Steph and Jimmy returned from their flight around the pattern, they brought with them a little bit more rain and hail. That kind of seemed to be the theme of the fly-in every time we landed somewhere. Before we could even fire up and get back out of there, it was raining and hailing some more. So we all just kind of stood around for a few minutes, figured probably not the best time to launch. Just tried to stay dry underneath the wings of the airplanes, listening to those heavy raindrops and little ice pellets bounce off the wing skins, adding just a little bit more character to each airplane. Before we all decided, hey, all this rain's making us a little bit thirsty, time to hop back in, fire up, and work our way on back towards Paxson, finding a few gravel bars along the way, and then kicking back alongside the fire, trying to dry out from a rather wet day of flying. So a few more swirly landings, and it was about that time for everyone to crack open a few cold ones And first priority was finding some firewood. Luckily, no beer was spilt in the shoving over of that tree. Not really the smartest thing, but it's not like things got any more intelligent from there. The next task was lighting the big pile of wood that we just knocked over. Unfortunately, even with an oil and gas engineer on hand, no one could quite figure out the exact ratio of avgas to wood to actually make the big pile of wood and avgas catch fire without causing serious bodily harm. After about 6, 7, maybe 8 tries of that, luckily there was some bald guy in an orange shirt that will remain unnamed who came up with the brilliant idea of just add more gas and a lot more gas and pour it in a big line and then jump back and light that, and that should work. And luckily it did. Of course, as the evening progressed, the sun went down, the mosquitoes came out and started attacking us. Things didn't get any more intelligent from there, and I am so sorry to report that there were multiple balsa wood airplanes harmed in the making of this video. Unfortunately, there were no survivors among any of them, but luckily, somebody had the wherewithal throughout all of that alcohol to set aside enough gasoline to be able to pour some into the gas tanks the next morning on the airplanes so we could go explore a little bit more in the hills just to the east of Paxson. So the fleet left Paxson, headed east into the hills to go explore some of the same places we were at the day before. Given the extensive academic research we did of those locations, some of us decided to pop into the first mining strip and go for a hike. Others of us continued on to explore for new strips, other places that may be available for landing, some that might be closed by fuel drums, so we couldn't land there. Not quite sure why. Looked like a great place to me, but perhaps they just weren't eager to have any more visitors over there. One group of us ventured out a little further east to another mining strip to go check it out. One of us might have had minor mechanical difficulties, nothing that couldn't be resolved by, well, looks like this part isn't really that necessary. Must be a spare part anyways, just duct tape that back up and let's go fly some more. Out of there, Steph and I ventured out on our own back to the unimproved strip. A beautiful little runway just right there at the base of the Knik Glacier to break out the fat bikes and go explore around a little bit by land. There was miles and miles of four-wheeler trails to ride around, although some of it was just a little bit below the waterline. Still a ton of fun to stretch the legs a little bit after being in the airplanes for so many hours. After our bike ride, it was time to start thinking about heading back to Saldovia to go back to work. Steph and I do have real jobs. Perhaps if we got more thumbs up and likes on the videos, we wouldn't have to work real jobs, but until then, we'll keep our weekend outings to a maximum of 4 days at a time. Our trip home took us back through Galcana for a fuel stop, and then a little further south, down to Tonsina, a beautiful little town, nestled right along the highway there with this super cool little Russian lodge owned by a Russian family. Very authentic Russian food if you guys are ever in the area. Although the strip is not on the chart, the town is. And right where the Richardson Highway crosses the Tonsina River, you'll find about a 1,000-foot long grass strip that will lead you right to the front of the lodge. Really fun, welcoming folks that were thrilled to see 2 airplanes show up. Given how dead the summer has been for everyone up here, I think they were a little less thrilled when they only saw 1 person get out of each airplane, but nonetheless, everyone's always happy to have customers rather than none. We had a great meal there, and then loaded back up to continue westward towards a little bit better weather. Of course, taking care of the airplanes first and making sure they got a good bath. And then taking a small detour to Sheep Mountain Lodge, once again, to grab one of Steph's favorite cookies, before finding our last destination of the weekend. A nice, soft, muddy sandbar at an undisclosed location that might have been just a little bit too short. But I think that's a story for another time. For now, we'll just have to chalk this up to another one of those very fun, very beautiful, a little bit dehydrating, and perhaps even educational Alaskan weekends.